In August 2001, I was in Omaha visiting some of my best friends ever. I was very curious about the history of the city in the 20th century, so I contacted someone in the public administration asking if they knew someone willing to share his or her memories with me. They gave me the name of Mary Galligan Cornett. So one day, with my tripod and my camera, I went to visit her to record an interview. Mary was a wonderful lady. I remember that at the beginning I was a little shy, but after a few minutes she made me very comfy, sharing with me her memories. Her recollection of Omaha in the 20th century were large and deep because she had been a key figure in the public administration of the city for decades. When I came back to Italy, unfortunately, I lost the footage. The footage emerged from an old box some months ago in 2023. With some troubles, I digitalized and edited it to save a wonderful testimony of the Omaha history. I think that Mary Galligan Cornett was a wonderful lady, whom all Americans should be proud. This video is in loving memory of her.
So, I know that you have been involved in the city government for more than 53 years, no?
Yes, sir.
And what I would like to know from you for the first is, well, now Omaha is a medium big city, a really big area, no? But how was Omaha 53 years ago?
Well, I think I will start with OU, University of Omaha. It was one building with some Quonset huts out and back. I graduated from high school, North High School, in 1942. My father became ill. In those days, they did not have health insurance, so all of the money my parents had saved for my college had to be spent taking care of my father. So I went to work that fall, I was 17, at the Omaha National Bank. O.T. Allison was the personnel director. The young men were all going off to service, and that's why they hired a young woman, and I was in a department called the Cash Item Department. And I started OU that fall because of the war. They had started a section of the university called the School of Adult Education. And Dr. Thompson was the head of that school. He was also the head professor in psychology. I had decided I wanted to be an industrial psychologist. That was a whole brand new field because they needed to do time and cost studies and production studies and whatnot to produce all of the war goods like the bomber plant and whatnot. So that's how I met Dr. Thompson, and I, at that time, majored in psychology at the university. Dr. Thompson became the first civil service director or personnel director hired for the city of Omaha. And he kept telling me I did not belong as an industrial psychologist, that I belonged in politics. At one time, my father's one uncle was chief of police and his other uncle was chief of the fire department, both at the same time. My father was active politically and was the president of the Second Ward Improvement Club. And so in 1945, a whole new administration went in, the Lehman, Dolan, Weaver, Jensen, four of them, unseated the majority of the then council. That was in May. Well, 46 maybe. Anyway, Dr. Thompson called one night and he said, Mary, we are hiring new people, the first of the new people under civil service, and we want you to come over and take the job. And I said, but doctor, I'm happy here at the bank and going to school. And he said, I'm telling you, you're taking the wrong thing. You need to come over. And I said, well, what are you paying? Now, I was making $125 a month at the Omaha National Bank, which doesn't sound like much. But in those days, it was a lot. The telephone company and other places were paying even men 90 or 100. So I was doing $25 better than they were. So he said, $150. And I said, I'll see you in the morning. It was $25 more a month than I was making. So I saw him in the morning. And in those days, to get on civil service, you had to be 21. I was not 21 until November, so I had to work 4 or 5 months. I can't remember how long. Until I was 21, and then I took the exams, passed them, and had my first job officially as a civil servant for the city, as the building clerk in the building department, checking in blueprints, figuring square footage, and all that sort of thing. Well, I was in that department for, I think, 3 or 4 years. My dad died in 1947, and I can't remember the exact year. But Glenn Cunningham was mayor, and there was an opening in the city clerk's office. And Glenn suggested that I take the exam and take that job, which was a promotion for me. And at that time, the city clerk's office was part of the mayor's division. So I went to the city clerk's office, and I was what they called the journal clerk. I recorded the council meetings, I did all the typing of it, and the whole bit. All that had to be typed up, the document and the vote, call it the journal. And then a few years went by, and Mr. Deneen, who was city clerk, became ill. And Mr. Byers, Charlie Byers, who was the deputy, became acting city clerk. Well, then they had to have an acting deputy, so I became acting deputy. So it goes on another year or so. And Mr. Byers died. And by this time, Mr. Deneen was back for a couple of months, and then Mr. Deneen had an asthma attack, and he died. So I became acting city clerk. And then after a few months, I became the city clerk. And that went on until I retired. Then I retired, and I had all these 3 different retirement parties. Everybody was so wonderful to me. All the businessmen in town, the CEOs, the attorneys, I can't even describe everyone. And a couple weeks after I retired, I went back at Mayor Dobbs' request and had an office in the law department and a secretary assigned to me, and my only work there was to work on a merger bill with the legislature. And I did that for about 9 months. And then I said to Dobb, if I'm ever going to smell the roses, I better start in now after the legislation session was over. And so that's my career. It's giving it pretty fast, but that's my career to go.
Okay. One question, because I don't know this. Omaha in the history has been more Democratic or Republican? The city administration.
The city itself is always, I would say, well, there were years that no one paid any attention to whether anyone was a Republican or a Democrat. That didn't come into action until there was a mayor elected, Mayor Boyle. His father-in-law was the city county treasurer for years, Sam Howell. And they were all very, very active Democrats. Sam is dead now. His daughter is a very active Democrat. Mike was a very active Democrat. And they sort of brought politics into city government, who was Democrat and who was Republican. No one had paid too much attention up until that point. But I would say that mostly the city administrations have been Republican. And, well, no, I said that wrong. Mostly up until the last 20 years or so, they were a mix between Republican and Democrat. Now, since then, a lot of them have been mostly Democrat. I mean, this administration with this mayor and whatnot is Democrat. However, with our former mayor, it was Republican. So it's, you really can't say. It balances off. Sometimes the Democrats get control, sometimes the Republicans get control. And with Hal, he's very much a Republican, and was a very good mayor, very good man to work for. Brilliant man. Now it's a Democratic administration. But it's interesting. And a lot of it seems to be that there are so many new people in Omaha that come in with the corporate structure, and they really don't know who to vote for, and they really take the lead of whatever company they work for suggestions. So it's always a toss up in the air whether you're going to have a Republican or Democratic administration. Now the council is elected separately, and sometimes we've had problems that most of the council was Democrat and the mayor was Republican, or the other way around, and they couldn't agree on anything. Well, that's sort of normal.
Well, the city is considered, I read this somewhere in some book, having in the last 10 or 15 years a really great economical growing, no? And I don't know if this is true or not. I also read that this happened because the city made some fiscal tax facility help for companies that decide
For
to
companies
open.
that
This is
came
true?
in, yes, a tax situation where they get some help financially, and they can wait for a certain number of years to pay or pay back. No, that has helped. And when you asked me, when I was telling you about it, I'd start with OU, because 72nd and Dodge was cornfields when I started the university.
72nd and Dodge, where there is Crossroad Mall.
Oh, yes.
It was just corner.
It was all cornfields.
Oh, the city, when you start to work, finished where now there is Crossroad Mall.
When I started at OU in 1942, in the fall, the university was the last big building.
Oh, where there is now
Yeah, I know. And when you got to 72nd Dodge, that was all cornfields except a little building on the southwest corner that was a little nightclub. Everything beyond that was country.
There is still now. There is still a nightclub in that
Yes,
area.
yes,
I think it's called the 20.
Yeah, well, anyway. Then they decided to build Crossroads. And that was a big, big zoning case and a big, big argument and whatnot. The attorney on that case was Jim Green, or at least one of the attorneys that got the zoning through. And Jim Green was very, very active in the American Legion and also the Democratic Party. He has a number of children. He's been dead for a number of years now. In fact, he dropped dead at a state Democratic convention. His daughter, Mary Kay Green, is an attorney and was a city councilwoman. His daughter, Jane Alsap, is an attorney. His other daughter is Judge Sinkovich. He has a daughter that was in social services. He has another one down in Kansas City who's a head librarian. He has one up in Minneapolis. His son John is an attorney and is on the OPBD board. His other son Pat and his wife, and Pat teaches law at Creighton, and his wife teaches there. Very interesting family. Anyway, it was Jim that got the zoning through for Crossroads. And from there, the town just kind of took off west. I think we're maybe a block and a half or very short distance from our zoning from Elkhorn. And that's why merger is going to have to be the name of the game, because these little towns within Douglas County cannot afford the services.
So what the area that now is practically considered the center of the city, because Crossroads Mall is practically considered by the people the center of the city at the time. Was
72nd is the center, and in fact it's rapidly moving west. The center's probably going to be 90th pretty soon.
Yeah, at the time it was just suburban.
Yeah,
outside the city.
But it's been fun to watch the town grow. It's been what's been fun, particularly for me, is to watch the rehabilitation of downtown.
Uh-huh.
Watch the new buildings go up, and the new businesses that have stayed, and the ones that are coming back downtown. And this does my heart good. I love to see it.
I know that in Omaha there are some biggest company operating in different fields, like Conagra in the food field, Mutual of Omaha in insurance, and First National Bank of Omaha in bank.
I'm very proud of the First National Bank and the Omaha World Herald, and all of them with their concentrated effort to recreate a new downtown. And they really have. And there's an old saying, put your money where your mouth is. Well, they certainly have. So I admire the heads of those corporations.
If you have a say why Omaha is different from other typical American city, like for example Kansas City or Des Moines, you that lived so much for so long in Omaha, what make Omaha different from the other cities?
Well, I'm going to use an old saying, and some people probably wouldn't like it, but we're still a cow town. You know, we're still very down to earth. We're still very hardworking. And the principal industry here since the beginning of the town was in South Omaha, was the stockyards. And Omaha has always been welcome home to the immigrants, and there have been waves of immigrants. The Irish came here, and most of them worked in the stockyards. And then came the Poles and the Czechs and some of the others following them, the Germans. They worked in the stockyards or in South Omaha. Now it's the Mexicans in South Omaha.
Yeah.
And that was a separate city at the time. And then Omaha and South Omaha were merged as one city. And Benson here was a separate city. Florence was a separate city. Those were all merged as one city. And we're still very basic. We haven't gotten sophisticated yet. So that's what I say makes the difference between us and Kansas City and some of the other places.
Okay. One more question. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right or not, but I suppose that the Nebraska laws are, compared to the other laws of the United States, more conservative, or for example Puritan or conservative, or both the word. Why this?
Why is Nebraska more conservative?
Yeah, conservative of Puritan, or I don't know how to express. Maybe you understood.
Because it's somewhat the Bible Belt. People in Omaha, contrary to maybe some people's thinking, are as a whole very religious and conservative in their actions. Look at the amount of people, young people, particularly with families, that are going to those churches that are way out on West Dodge and whatnot. Then the other churches on Sunday morning, take a look at them. And none of them are suffering particularly. Fundamental, those families and people with children have a very fundamental belief in the Ten Commandments and home life and trying to raise their children right and all of that. And all the whole state is conservative. And you get out in the state and there are certain areas, certain immigrants settle there. You get up pretty close to the sand hills. And my grandmother's father tree-claimed, and he was a Civil War veteran. He got land, and he tree-claimed and whatnot, and then he brought up other claims. And so there were a lot of people like that came out of the Civil War up the western part of Nebraska, or up close to the sand hills. And then some of the little towns, there were various immigrants came in that simply settled somewhere like German towns and somewhere like Lutheran towns. And so somebody got there, settled, and then brought other people into it. All very religious, all very conservative. And they were also very, very hard workers or they didn't survive. So I think that's what keeps the state very conservative.
You talk about different immigrant group that come to Omaha, about German, English,
Right.
Irish, Scottish. What is what is the group or the two groups that played the most important role in the history of the city?
Excuse me.
Oh.
I don't think there was any particular group played an important role more than any other group. The Irish pretty much went into politics. The Germans and the Scotch started businesses. And of course you also had the Jewish immigrants, and they started businesses. But they all each contributed to the welfare of the city. I don't think there was any predominant group that you could say that made the city.
And there was a significant Italian group in Omaha or not?
Oh yes, the Italians have been a very significant group in Omaha. They first sort of settled in two areas, one down off of South 10th, and they ran restaurants and were workers. Then another group settled along North 17th, and then that group sort of disseminated as the town grew and whatnot. And as their children or grandchildren came along, they moved west or out of the area. But many of the families down along South 10th have still stayed there. And that's where all of our good Italian restaurants came from. And I'll say it because I'm old enough to know many of our Italian bootleggers.
Okay, I think we made a really good job.
You
You
know.
told me really many interesting, interesting things. Okay.
And let me tell you, they contribute some awful damn good whiskey.